In an alternate reality where Arya Stark was named Tywin Lannister, the political and social dynamics of Westeros would shift dramatically. Arya, born as the youngest Stark child, known for her fiery spirit, sharp wit, and independence, would now be thrust into the role of the Lannister patriarch. But this Arya would not be the Arya we knew. Instead, she would embody the values of both the Stark and Lannister families. Raised in the cold, harsh world of Winterfell, Arya's training as a fighter and assassin would complement the Lannister strategic mind. The name Tywin Lannister carries immense weight, power, and fear, and Arya would inherit all of that, but she would bring with her the resilience, honor, and stubbornness of the Stark bloodline. Her new position would have a direct impact on the way Westeros would view the Lannisters. The world's perception of House Lannister would no longer be one of excess, arrogance, and cruelty, but one of shrewd leadership, respect, and perhaps even mercy. Arya, known for defying gender norms and familial expectations, would have an entirely different approach to the throne. As a Lannister, she would navigate the halls of power with the same ruthlessness that Tywin had, but with a certain cold pragmatism honed by the hardships she endured in Winterfell. Unlike her brother Jaime or her twin Cersei, Arya would never allow her emotions to dictate her actions. She would not be easily swayed by family loyalty, and she would not hesitate to make the hard decisions that Tywin was known for, but in a more calculated and measured way. Her first test would come when she steps into the shoes of Tywin during the War of the Five Kings. With her ability to think on her feet and her experience in combat, she would not hesitate to play the Game of Thrones, but her strategies would differ from her father's. Arya would focus on gathering intelligence and executing swift, decisive moves, making her the most unpredictable and dangerous player on the board. Unlike Tywin, she would take a more personal approach to war. She would not hesitate to use her face, changing abilities learned from the faceless men to infiltrate enemy camps, gaining intelligence and striking from the shadows. However, her relationship with her family would be more complex. As Tywin's daughter, Arya would be expected to maintain the Lannister name's legacy, but she would never completely embrace the Lannister way of life. Cersei, who had always craved power, would see Arya's rise to prominence as a threat. She would likely try to undermine Arya at every turn, seeing her as competition for the throne. Cersei would challenge Arya not only as a sibling, but also as a woman who refused to fit into the mold of a traditional Lannister lady. Jaime, ever the honorable knight, would be torn between his loyalty to his sister and the respect he would have for Arya's strength and intellect. Jaime would likely look to her for guidance, but in the back of his mind, he would question whether she was truly Lannister at all. Arya's disregard for the traditions of House Lannister would trouble him, but her ability to lead with honor and integrity would earn his respect over time. Their relationship would grow from sibling rivalry to mutual understanding, as Jaime would come to see that Arya, despite her Lannister name, was a Stark through and through. Then there is Tyrion, whose wit and intelligence would be a valuable asset to Arya, but their dynamic would be entirely different. Tyrion, ever the outsider within his own family, would likely see Arya as an ally, even a potential partner in governing. They would form an unexpected bond over their shared experiences of being outsiders in a family that values power above all else. Tyrion would respect Arya's practical approach to ruling and her ability to think outside the box, but he would also recognize that her nature was fundamentally different from his father's. He would, in a sense, become her advisor, offering wisdom from his years of navigating the treacherous waters of politics. Her role as Tywin Lannister would also affect her relationship with the other houses of Westeros. The Starks, although Arya's blood family, would not see her as they once did. She would be seen as a traitor to the Stark name, a Lannister in disguise. Her relationship with Sansa, who had always adhered to the rules of noble life, would be strained. Sansa would have trouble accepting Arya's ruthless, pragmatic side, and Arya would struggle to reconcile her Stark values with the brutal realities of Lannister politics. As the new Tywin, Arya would also have to deal with the many factions within Westeros, including the Tyrells, Baratheons, and Martells. Her skill for reading people and understanding their motives would serve her well in these negotiations. However, she would always remain a fierce protector of her family, which would sometimes cloud her judgment. Unlike Tywin, who had no qualms about betraying others to achieve his goals, Arya would hold a certain loyalty to the Starks that would complicate her alliances. Arya's personal life would also be shaped by her new name. She would not marry for political advantage like Cersei, or even for love like Jaime. Instead, Arya would likely focus on consolidating power through strategic alliances, choosing partners for their usefulness in securing her rule rather than out of any personal affection. Her marriage to a noble house would be a means to an end, never the end itself. She would remain the same warrior, assassin, and survivor who had fought her way through Westeros as a Stark, but now she would have the power to shape the future of the realm according to her own vision. In this world, Arya Tywin Lannister would not be bound by the rules of Westeros. She would create her own destiny, refusing to allow the weight of her name to define her. Her leadership would be marked by cold calculation, brutal pragmatism, and an unwavering commitment to the survival of her family, even if it meant breaking every rule that had once defined House Lannister. The name Tywin Lannister would no longer be synonymous with tyranny and cruelty. Under Arya's leadership, it would be a name that commanded respect and fear, but also a certain amount of admiration. As Arya continues to wield the name Tywin Lannister, her actions would begin to redefine the political landscape of Westeros. Unlike her father, Arya would not rely solely on wealth and armies to maintain control. Instead, her greatest strength would lie in her ability to manipulate situations from the shadows. She would become a master, strategist, using her knowledge of people and politics to outmaneuver her rivals. While Tywin relied on brute force and public displays of power, Arya's influence would be more subtle, her moves calculated with precision, using her reputation and intelligence as weapons. Her relationship with Cersei, already strained, would grow even more hostile. Cersei, who had always craved the throne for herself, would see Arya as a direct threat to her ambitions. She would attempt to manipulate the situation, trying to break Arya's resolve by questioning her loyalty to the Lannister name. But Arya, with her cunning and sharp mind, would see through Cersei's machinations. Where Tywin had played the role of a domineering father to his children, Arya would be a different kind of ruler, a calculated, unyielding force who wouldn't hesitate to dispose of anyone who got in her way, even family. Jaime, while initially conflicted, would ultimately come to respect Arya's approach to leadership. Despite his strong sense of honor, Jaime understood the brutal realities of ruling in Westeros. Over time, he would admire Arya's ability to outthink her enemies rather than just overpower them. However, his allegiance to his sister Cersei would always be a point of contention. While Arya would never shy away from difficult decisions, she would not have the same emotional ties to her siblings that Jaime did. Her pragmatism would always take precedence, and she would make decisions based on the survival of House Lannister, even if it meant sacrificing her own blood. Tyrion, ever the outsider within his family, would find an ally in Arya. Although Tyrion's loyalty to his family was strained, he would see Arya as someone who could reshape Westeros, a leader who could bring stability. Their shared experience as outsiders would foster a bond between them, one that transcended family loyalty. Arya's cold pragmatism would appeal to Tyrion's own sense of survival, and together, they would form a powerful duo. Arya's rule would be marked by a series of calculated moves, with Tyrion providing his sharp wit and counsel to help her navigate the dangerous political landscape. As Arya takes her place as the head of House Lannister, her alliances with other powerful houses would also come into play. She would begin to weave a web of connections, forging relationships with the Tyrells, the Martells, and even the Greyjoys. Unlike Tywin, who had used intimidation to force others to bend to his will, Arya would build her alliances based on mutual benefit and respect. Her understanding of the Game of Thrones would allow her to play these houses against one another, manipulating the factions within the realm to ensure her own power. Yet Arya would still be a Stark at heart. Her loyalty to her family, while not blind, would guide her decisions. She would not let the Lannister name cloud her judgment when it came to protecting those she cared about. The Starks, who had once seen her as a traitor, would slowly begin to recognize Arya as a formidable force, someone who could reshape Westeros in a way that none of them had imagined. Although Arya's relationship with her family would be strained, her loyalty to the North would never waver. She would take a more strategic approach, offering alliances to her Stark siblings while ensuring her own survival in the capital. Arya's rule would also bring a new dynamic to her relationship with the people of Westeros. Unlike Tywin, who had ruled with an iron fist, Arya would focus on fostering stability through careful governance. Her methods might be ruthless at times, but she would never be as despised as her father. Her rule would focus on maintaining the delicate balance between power and mercy. Arya's leadership would not be defined by cruelty, but by practicality. She would implement policies that ensured the survival of her house while also maintaining a sense of justice that the common people could respect. Her handling of the Iron Throne would be strategic. Unlike Cersei, who had always coveted the throne with an obsessive passion, Arya would view it as a tool, not an end in itself. She would not seek the throne for personal glory or power. Instead, Arya would understand that true power lies in the ability to influence and manipulate, not just sit on a throne. Her control over Westeros would come from her understanding of people and their motivations, not just the armies at her command. Arya's leadership would eventually bring her face to face with Daenerys Targaryen, a woman with an entirely different vision for the realm. Daenerys, driven by her desire to break the wheel of oppression, would clash with Arya's more pragmatic and calculating style. The two would find themselves in direct conflict, each unwilling to compromise on their ideals. Daenerys would see Arya as a threat to her vision of a just world, while Arya would view Daenerys as naive and reckless. This ideological battle would be the defining conflict of their time. In the end, Arya Tywin Lannister would become one of the most powerful and unpredictable rulers Westeros had ever seen. She would not seek the approval of others, nor would she be bound by the rules that others tried to impose upon her. Her rule would be marked by careful strategy, cold pragmatism, and a deep understanding of the power dynamics that shaped the world she ruled. Under her leadership, House Lannister would rise to unprecedented heights, but it would be a Lannister house shaped not by greed and cruelty, but by a vision of power rooted in survival, intellect, and unyielding resolve. The legacy of Tywin Lannister would live on, but through the indomitable spirit of Arya Stark, redefined for a new age.